Choosing a nursing home can cause a lot of anxiety and feelings of guilt for families. The decision to place a family member under the care of a nursing home facility is usually made when health and/or mental capabilities have declined and the family is no longer sufficiently able to care for their loved one. All facilities must ensure and protect the rights of every resident and provide a clean and healthy and attractive environment. Residents are entitled to treatment regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, ability to pay, or source of payment. You may not be aware that you can review the state surveys of each nursing home that you have an interest in because Medicare and Medicaid facilities are required by law to let you see their survey reports. Every resident has the right to receive medical care, nursing care, rehabilitative and restorative therapies, and personal hygiene in a safe, clean environment. It is imperative to do your homework when choosing a nursing home facility to avoid any instances of foreseeable abuse, neglect, and death that continue to be reported within nursing home facilities nationwide every day. Every resident has the right to be treated with consideration, respect, and dignity in full recognition of his or her individuality. This includes privacy during medical treatment and care of personal needs. People not involved in the care of residents should not be present during examinations and treatment without consent from the resident. Every resident should be encouraged and assisted to exercise his or her right to voice grievances and recommend changes in policies and services to facility staff and/or outside representatives of his or her choice without fear of coercion, discrimination, or reprisal. But as this next insider exclusive tragic story clearly demonstrates, reports of serious physical, sexual, and verbal abuse are too numerous among the nation's nursing homes. A congressional report has found that over 30% of the over 5,000 nursing homes in the U.S. were cited for an abuse violation that had to cause harm between January 1999 and January 2001. Over 2,500 of the violations were serious enough to cause actual harm or to place residents in immediate jeopardy of death or serious injury. Common problems included untreated bed sores, inadequate medical care, malnutrition, dehydration, preventable accidents, and inadequate sanitation and hygiene. In fact, in 1,600 of these cases, the abuse violations were serious enough to cause actual harm to residents or to place the residents in immediate jeopardy of death or serious injury. Tragically, 89-year-old Violet Steele became another victim of Brookdale's profits over people Wall Street philosophy at the Brookdale Laguna Creek Memory Care Unit. She initially became a resident at Brookdale on April 18, 2014 to recover from a fractured hip. She suffered from mild dementia and because of her age was at extreme risk for falls. Brookdale knew that. But she soon became the unwitting victim of Brookdale's dangerous and reckless management and chronic short staffing, incompetence, and negligence. Violet's most tragic fall occurred on April 2, 2017 when her wheelchair tipped over a curb, striking her head on the ground and breaking her neck. She returned from the hospital with a cervical collar and 2 weeks later fell out of bed again, striking her head and fracturing her C7 and right frontal lobe. She died of her injuries, including a subdural hematoma, a few days later. Leslie Clement of the Clement Law Group, one of California's premier elder abuse trial lawyers, and her staff represented the Steele family in the pursuit of justice for Violet. They spent a year investigating an alarming pattern at Brookdale's Memory Care Building where residents were having multiple unwitnessed falls, which caused broken bones including femurs, necks, and backs. They built Violet Steele's case from the ground up with more than 1,000 hours of research and investigation into Brookdale, the corporation, and the local facility where she died. Facing extremely damning facts and fully aware of Leslie's recent $27 million verdict against Brookdale's predecessor, Emeritus, they decided to avoid a publicly scandalous trial and agreed to a significant settlement. Here's Violet's daughter, Nancy Bolton, and her husband, Craig Bolton, to describe what Violet meant to them.
My mom, like most moms, they're your everything. They're the ones who brought you here.
There was so many good times that we shared.
She enjoyed music and dancing with family.
She just brought love to our family. It's the only thing I can say about her.
I'm very angry and sad on the way my mother's life ended.
The way she passed was just wrong. Even with her advancing dementia, she was still a joyous person.
I hold responsible the Brookdale Corporation.
From upper management at the corporate level to the executive director at the facility that she was at. As an executive director, you do not show up to see what's going on. Blew it off. It was not a big deal.
I think corporate executives should be held responsible because they're the one dictating how much money goes to each facility. Even though you need more staff, you're not going to get it.
I believe that Leslie Clement is an outstanding person, a very caring person.
Leslie has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in California to protect our elders. She makes it her dedicated mission to get legitimate and truthful answers to what really happened to her clients in each case. She believes that elders within our community deserve the utmost respect and that any individual who brings harm to an elderly person should be held accountable. She uses the civil court system to ensure the rights of the elderly are protected and that their abusers are held accountable for their wrongdoing. She sees it her mission to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. Leslie has built a substantial reputation by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down, and her amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide her clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Sacramento, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce Leslie Clement and Monica Padrazini to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Today we're here, we're going to be talking about many of the cases that you do, like nursing home deaths and all this other sort of thing. But let's talk a little bit about both of you and how you got in this business of the area of law of protecting elders.
In 1994, I got a phone call from my Aunt Pam, and she left me a voicemail message. And I'll never forget her voice. She was trembling, she was crying, and she told me her mother, my Aunt Dorothy, was in the emergency room. And she'd been beaten up. And the doctor said it was elder abuse. And she didn't know what to do. I'm the only one foolish enough in my family to be a lawyer. So I went down and I saw Dorothy and I couldn't believe it.
And she had been abused in the facility.
She had been beaten up by the only caregiver in a 46-bed Alzheimer's specialty facility in Marin. Very expensive facility. And she was put outside to make it appear as though she had been mugged. In the course of our investigation, my investigator found, in about 2 hours, 2 other former employees who worked with the assailant in 2 different care facilities who had reported her, the assailant, for beating up, physically abusing other residents. And nobody did any background. Nobody reported them. They don't want anybody coming in from the state to see what they're doing. So I was a business lawyer. I'd never done anything. I'd never read a medical record before. I had no idea what I was doing, but I dug in, I learned, I talked to advocates all over the country, and I learned that nobody will take these cases at that time. And they would say to me, well, you'll take an elder abuse case? Will you help us? And that was my first case. And we tried it, and we got a great result. But it changed my life. So I left the firm I was in, left the partnership I was in, and started my own firm. It was me and a paralegal to start. And then my cousin Monica joined the firm, and she's been an invaluable part of our team for 25 years.
And I understand, Monica, that not only are you a paralegal, but you do a lot of the groundwork investigation, the gumshoe work, right?
Yes, that is part of my job, doing the investigation into complaints issued by the public, specifically when we take a case, our client, to the Department of Social Services, if it's assisted living, to the Department of Health, if it's a nursing home. I retrieve the files that are available to the public and do a thorough review of the documentation. I've found over the 25 years, we have had a lot more pushback from these agencies on providing us with the documentation that supports their investigations. In the beginning, it was forthcoming in the public file, and now we're told they don't maintain it. We have to do a FOIA request or a PRA, Public Records Act request, and usually that turns into years before, if we ever see the investigative.
Yeah, so let's look at what's going behind the scenes. If they make it difficult, the state agencies make it difficult to get information, who's behind that? Because the state agency is not being sued, right?
No, they're not.
They are instructing their investigators not to substantiate complaints, egregious complaints that result in resident deaths, but they will substantiate a minor hot water is not the appropriate temperature, or there's, an uncleanly kitchen or some type of unsanitary situation, but, falls that result in fractures, abuse, sexual, that is typically unsubstantiated.
When, since you do many of these type of cases, when they see you coming and again requesting additional information, don't they get used to you after a while?
I think they are now.
No, but don't they say, okay, we'll give it to you, no hassle?
No. Now it's getting more difficult. We, have to go up the chain, starting with the officer of the day who is by law supposed to provide you on request when you come into their agency with the file. Now you go in there and, the file's not here. It's locked in the investigator's cabinet, things that are completely illegal. They need to be produced on demand. It's for the public's service to know what's in this file for a facility.
Today we are here talking about the case of Violet Steele. Before we get into the case, Leslie, tell our audience a little bit about who she was.
Violet was a beautiful woman. She was well loved. She was active. She liked to visit with her sister, her family. She had been married, had a beautiful daughter and a son, and she was a person who liked to help others. She liked to dance. She liked to party with her family and friends. I mean, she was a vivacious, very loving person. She went to Brookdale's Elk Grove facility, Elk Grove, California, and she was admitted for assisted living. Her daughter and son-in-law had been helping her, but she wasn't having as much companionship as she could, and her daughter and son-in-law both worked full-time. So this seemed like a great solution, and it was very close to the family, so they could visit every day, and they did. Violet moved into Brookdale in April of 2014. Within a few months of her admission, she started to suffer from unwitnessed falls.
That's a very interesting term. The first time I brought it up to someone, they said, what is an unwitnessed fall? Well, it's you've fallen, nobody's witnessed it. I didn't even know they had a term like...
Well, it's an industry term. Someone is found down. We don't know how they were down. Did someone push them? Did they fall out of a wheelchair? But they're all unwitnessed. And what that means is there is no staff available to be assisting and supervising the residents.
In this state, aren't there requirements for certain types of patients, residents, that there should be a certain percentage of staff available 24/7 because they're frail, because they might fall in unwitnessed falls, right?
There are varying degrees of requirements from the state for how many staff, the type of staff you have. So starting in assisted living, you just have to have enough staff to meet the needs of all of your residents. There's no specific number, but personally I like that because you can develop through investigation and discovery the acuity level or care needs of all the residents based upon the defendant's own assessment.
Let me ask you this. You know, some parents have these monitors when they leave the home, and they want to make sure that the person who's watching their kid is doing the right thing so they can see from afar. With all the money that goes into these nursing homes and these assisted living homes, are there monitors in each one of the room where they can dial in and see what's going on?
No, and there's not. And the industry has fought for decades to keep what we call granny cams out of the rooms. Family members have tried to get granny cams in their mother or father's room.
Because the nursing home doesn't want to be observed, right?
Absolutely. And they say, oh, it's for the privacy of the residents. And this is the resident's family requesting it.
So what happened to Violet?
She was in the facility for a short period of time, and then her daughter received a letter from the executive director saying, your mother now has some dementia. As a result, she is required to move into our new memory care.
Okay, that was Brookdale's requirement.
That was Brookdale.
Which is supposed to be a unit which is going to watch over them better, supposedly.
You pay more money, you're supposed to get more staff.
Yeah, I saw the price went up from $4,100 to $6,200 per month.
The memory care is where these assisted living facilities make the big bucks. And they sell the families on it. They say, bring them here, don't put them in a nursing home, we can provide the care. And they're going to be in this little cottage, and it's going to be a home-like environment. The problem is, those locked units, or they should be locked units, they put fewer staff in there than they would in a skilled nursing facility.
Mm-hmm. And you were able to document this?
Oh, absolutely.
So really, they're not providing what they sold the family in the first place, are they?
They never do. It's a lot of marketing. It's very flashy. It's very nice. But the reality is, from a business standpoint, it's heads in the beds, fill that building, and close the back door. Don't let anybody leave.
Yeah, please explain for our audience what that really means. Heads in the bed, make sure we have all the beds filled.
Absolutely. Get that whole building filled. Every single bed needs to be filled. And that means you take residents who need more care than the facility is licensed to have, is capable of caring for, and that is why elders are abused and neglected.
Right, and then that last part of that slogan, close the back door, meaning they don't want anybody to leave.
The executive director is told by corporate, you do everything you can to keep residents in that building. So they do things like bring in hospice. Oh, you know, we can put your mom on hospice and she can stay here forever. And the family says, well, my mom's not dying. Oh, that doesn't matter. This just means they're going to get more care. It doesn't mean she's dying.
So what happened finally to Violet?
The door was left open out to the outside. Violet sees it. She rolls herself in the wheelchair outside, where she falls off a curb in the parking lot. Nobody from the facility knows that she's there. Who finds her? It's a family member of a different resident who finds her outside. Her neck is broken. She's taken to the hospital. She comes back in a cervical collar, and now she's a 3-person assist.
And 3-person means 3 people have to be available to her for 24 hours a day?
A 3-person assist means that if they're going to transport her and move her from the bed to the wheelchair, from the wheelchair to a chair, there needs to be someone on each side of her and someone holding her neck, her head, because she's got a broken neck.
Yeah, none of this happened, right?
Her son-in-law saw staff, 1 person on each side, but they only had 2 staff. So they called a young lady in who worked in the kitchen. She held her head. As they started to move her, Violet screamed. The young girl took her hands off and ran down the hall, screaming herself. Within a few days, 2.5 weeks, Violet, alone in her room, managed to get from her bed face down on the floor, breaking another vertebrae in her neck and experiencing a subdural hematoma, a brain bleed, which led to her death.
Monica, I want to ask you a question, and this applies to both of you. You know, you tell a very horrible story, but how do you get all of this information? You be the investigator, and you know, you deposing people. Are people telling you this information, or what?
If we are fortunate enough to find former employees of the defendant facility, we are usually successful in getting them to tell what is actually going on.
Yeah, so even when you go to trial and you bring a witness, a former employee on the other side, they say this is a disgruntled employee, they had bad performance. It's really up to the jury to believe them or not, correct?
Absolutely.
So they are useful, even though the other side's going to say they're worthless, right?
I think the juries see through that line of defense easily when, you know, the individual's telling how they were understaffed, overwhelmed, not trained, and, you know, you get several people telling that same story. You know, it's going to become very effective.
Legally, what was the end result? You went to trial?
We did not try this case because Brookdale immediately came forward after seeing the evidence that we developed.
But you were prepared to go to trial.
1.5 years to get there, and they begged us to go to mediation. They saw the evidence that we had. They saw the evidence of fraud. They saw the evidence of malice, conscious disregard for Violet's rights and safety, and they made it right.
They settled the case, confidentially.
Absolutely did.
Okay, and congratulations on that work. You know, I keep saying to myself, without people like you, many of these families don't have a hope because, you know, nobody would take these cases. Now, we have with us today Violet's daughter, Nancy Bolton, and her husband, and we are going to bring them on right now. Thank you both for being on the show. It's a horrible experience to remember what happened to your mother, Nancy, but kind of relate what your mom meant to you.
What she meant to me, she just, you know, my mother, and, you know, she did everything she was supposed to do.
Did you guys get along?
Yeah, I mean, she just loved her family greatly. She had a lot of, she came from a large family, so I had a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins, and usually, you know, growing up, that's what we did. We all got together and, you know, food, music, dancing, that's what they did.
When you first put her in the nursing home, you probably thought this is a good place for her, right?
She had mild dementia at the time, and she was recovering from a broken hip, and so she needed a place to recover from that.
And you had confidence that this place was pretty good.
Right. It was close to our home, and we liked the way it was set up, each individual cottage, and then in the cottage were about 12 residents. And they had a common area for where they ate, and then they had a common area up front for like just watching television.
And when did you first start seeing that things weren't the way they were supposed to be?
There was, it wasn't too long after she was there that she actually had a fall that was not, they couldn't tell us why she fell or how she fell. And she, at the time, just thought it was funny because she didn't get hurt. You know, she just, somehow I ended up on the floor. And, you know, at that point it was like, well, you're supposed to have staff in here.
How did you know? You know, old people fall, right? How did you know that the staff wasn't around to watch over her?
They told me, Nancy and I actually developed kind of a relationship, not a relationship, but a respect for a couple of the caregivers, excuse me. And those caregivers, we had somewhat of a trust in them. And they told me that, hey, they called me and they said, hey, your mother had a fall that was unwitnessed.
I keep hearing this word, unwitnessed. There's witness falls and there's unwitnessed falls.
Which means that there was nobody there that seen her fall. They just found her on the floor.
But she had many falls, didn't you? Right? Unwitnessed.
Yes.
You know, if I was in your shoes, I'd go to the staff and say, what the hell's going on? Which I assume you did, right?
They kind of gave us a narrative of what they thought happened, why the fall happened. But, you know, like one time they put her in one of her lounge chairs and, you know, she's still mobile enough. And we think she tried to get up and that's when she ended up on the floor. Yeah. So after that, you know, it was no more putting her in the lounge chair.
How did you end up coming to Leslie's firm?
I just did some research on the internet, different attorneys.
Because you thought something was wrong.
I wanted somebody local. And I wanted somebody that specialized in this type of elder abuse.
Yeah, you know, this case took a long time, didn't it? A few years.
It seemed like it took a long time,
Okay,
yes.
so my question to you is, what's your opinion of the way the justice system operates?
It doesn't.
I agree. It doesn't really work.
To me, there should be criminal charges. And that's one thing that you cannot do in situations like this.
Criminal charges against who?
Corporations.
Any other parting words to anybody who's thinking about moving their relatives?
Make sure you do your homework. Go to, you know, if it's in California, the Department of Social Services website. You can look up every assisted living facility that's in California, and you can see if they've had all the reports that are there that have been reported, that if there's any incidents.
Can you do that online?
Absolutely. And I still check on Brookdale. And they're still doing the same thing.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming here, taking your time to let the world know what happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You hear a lot in the news, like your cases, right? People falling, breaking their neck, dying, horrible things. Most people believe that a nursing home is going to take care of your aging parent. But that's not the case, is it?
No, what we've seen over the last 25 years is a pattern in practice of admitting residents who the facility does not have the staff to take care of.
The reason they don't have the staff is they don't want to spend the money.
Absolutely. It is a scheme.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Because I read that, you know, like Brookdale brings in $4.6 billion a year. They cover, I don't know, handle 1,100 units.
They have hundreds of buildings across the country. Brookdale is the largest long-term care provider in the United States.
Have you ever looked at their, you know, their balance sheet? I'm sure you have.
Oh, yes. It's a publicly traded company.
Yeah, well, you see the gross profit. You see the expense for labor. I'm thinking it cannot be a great percentage of the net income coming in, right?
Correct.
So it wouldn't hurt them to spend a few extra bucks here and there to get the kind of care, to avoid the kind of lawsuits that they end up paying them out, right?
Absolutely. The money's there. The money gets siphoned off to sometimes multiple shell corporations, all owned by the same people. And they like to do that because they like to make the individual facility look like it's bankrupt.
I need to bring this up. You know, what you're saying seems crooked, seems immoral, it seems illegal, and a naive person might think, well, where are the regulatory agencies? What are they doing? We'd like to bring up the fact that regulatory agencies are politicized, meaning that sometimes there are statutes on the books, sometimes there's rules they have to follow, but there's no budget that is provided to these regulatory agencies. So A, they can't hire staff to investigate things, and B, where's this money coming from? Well, indirectly it's coming from the nursing homes. It's coming from the lobbyists, right, to the politicians who basically destroy an agency, a consumer protection agency, for example, that might help prevent some of these horrible events that happen, you know, these incidents that happen. For all those who are watching this show right now, and you're thinking about putting your mother, your father, somebody that's near and dear to you into a nursing home, what do you have to say to them? Where should they check? What should they do?
Well, they should go to the facility unannounced. They should walk through the halls and see if employees even look them in the eye, or are they turning away. They should get down on their knees next to a resident who is in a wheelchair. Use your senses. How do they smell? How do they look?
How are they going to allow you to do this?
There's nobody around. Oh, you can't.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
You can do your own inspection and nobody's going to stop you.
I tell my clients that before you do the tour with a marketing person, go in the building on a weekend, on a holiday, at night. There is no staff in there at night. I mean, really. And your point about the politicizing these agencies, in 1998, I was part of a investigation by the General Accounting Office and hearings, Senate hearing, that doctor, nurse, and a health facility evaluating nurse, which is an investigative nurse for the state of California, came out and testified about what was going on. And that health facility evaluator nurse from California testified that it's dirty at the top. I write citations, and my boss says, you can't issue that citation against that facility.
Really?
Absolutely.
This is a governmental agency, correct?
Absolutely. It's a Department of Public Health in California, which oversees both nursing homes and hospitals.
Okay, so let's say the worst happens. You suspect that your mother, your father, somebody in a nursing home that's related to you has been abused, okay? What should you do immediately? Now, a lot of people might think, call the police. Are the police going to respond?
Well, in my experience, the police and sheriff's department, yes, they'll respond, but there's really no investigation done. The residents may have dementia or they've died as a result of the abuse or neglect, so they can't ask them, they can't speak for themselves, they have no voice. So and the DA's office isn't going to spend the time or money to do this, and that's been the case in Sacramento for the entire time I've been working on these cases, and it's true in other states.
Why aren't they?
Well, because they're challenging cases to prove. As I said, you know, the victim usually has died or they have dementia. And the state doesn't issue citations, really, unless they are physically in the building and see something happen. A resident, a patient, a family member, an employee comes forward and says what happened, and the state feels, okay, we've got enough evidence here. But my experience, the Department of Social Services, which oversees assisted living, the Department of Public Health, which oversees hospitals and nursing homes, their quality of investigation has gone down so much. I mean, they just don't have enough investigators to go out in the field. I mean, for example, the Department of Social Services, one investigator may have 70 buildings that they have to go see annually and whenever there's a complaint. And that's just not one town. That's a whole region. It's physically impossible. Can't be done.
You know, because you are in a practice area that not too many lawyers take these cases, how do you examine, evaluate the cases that come to you? Because personally, if I was in one of these victims' shoes, I'd be calling you. But then a lot of people are calling you. So how do you determine, these are long cases, right? They take years. They cost lots of money. How do you evaluate the cases you take?
Well, we have a very detailed process. One person on our team is completely devoted to getting information from the family, obtaining photographs, diaries, journals, anything the family has, creating a history with the family of what happened. Then we are in the process of gathering all the records, and that's part of Monica's job. You know, fighting with the facility to obtain records, hospital records, nursing home records, and they're always incomplete, always incomplete. And then we send those records to a geriatric physician expert, and he tells us, is there a case here? What's the medical reasons why our client ended up dead?
So you do a lot of work before you even decide whether you're going to take the case or not.
Absolutely. We may spend up to a year developing the case before we ever file a complaint. But we do spend a lot of money evaluating each case before we take it. And the reason is, you know, my first case was Grandma Dorothy. And I saw how devastating it was for my family to not only know what happened to Dorothy, but then to go through a trial, to have their depositions taken. And I vowed I would never take a case, I would never put a family through this unless I was very confident that we would win.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being on the show. Keep doing what you're doing. The world needs you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.